behalf of the Independent Group, please.
Thank you, Ken Corlett. Taoiseach, in what may be my last leader's question in the Dáil, I want to return to familiar territory, an issue I've raised with you and others many, many times, and that's the delivery of balanced regional development. Now, I understand that the delivery of a balance of development between regions isn't something that can be accomplished overnight, especially when there are huge gaps. I think it has to be embedded in all departments, and in my view, it has to be overseen by a senior minister with responsibility for coordination and delivery. And unfortunately, that has not happened. And the reason I can say this with certainty is that the economic gap between the northern and western region and other regions in Ireland continues to widen, and very unfortunately, it also continues to widen with regions across the EU. Now, Taoiseach, if any policy is working, then we will see some impact at least. That impact has to be visible in some areas of the economy. And I just want to give you a few examples to illustrate the failure of current policy in regard to balanced regional development. I mean, all the figures produced by the Northern and Western Regional Assembly and Eurostat show that the Northern and Western region is poorly served in terms of national resources. For example, the most recent figures show that since 2016, just 11% of all national projects worth over 1 million were committed to this region, even though we have 17% of the population. And shamefully, only 5.7% of all national projects worth over 20 million were committed to this region. And again, 17% of the population. If you go back to housing completions last year, 17% of the population, 11% of housing completions. Look at national and local roads. Our local roads budget for the last 10 years was well below the national average, and the national roads budget was 1/3 less than the national average. Taoiseach, those figures are staggering, and they're also accurate. And my question to you is, why has government not moved decisively to close that economic gap? And furthermore, what are you proposing to do in the future that is different and that will make a real change? Because balanced regional development is not happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I appreciate the Deputy has been consistent and persistent in terms of addressing the issue of balanced regional development. But of course, there are statistics and damn statistics and all the rest of it. No, hear me out, please. Just hear me out. In terms of, because I've often, I mean, I was in a rural village recently during the local elections, and the councillor pointed out to me that the population had gone from about 500 when he had gone into local government to about 2.5 to about 3,000 or whatever. Point being, of course, that place had grown. A lot of rural Ireland has grown in population and so on, and yet the mantra is a declining rural Ireland, and it's elected a lot of independents here, and somehow the truth isn't reconciling. Somehow the truth isn't reconciling here, because there's been huge development in many parts of the regions. There has equally been big investments in Dublin and in urban areas, and in fact, I think post-COVID it'll be very interesting to see what happens because of the development of remote working, rural working hubs and so on like that. We're now getting a greater concentration of workers outside of cities than we ever did before, which is also adding to rural economies and to local economies. But there's also very big infrastructural investments happening in terms of road developments, in terms of third level institutions and so forth. I think on the public transport, far more needs to happen, but there's a longer lead-in time in terms of rail projects. We've had the All-Ireland Rail Review, but there's a longer lead-in time in terms of that. I think we need clarity on roads, and the next government should be very clear on roads, and the next programme for government should be very clear on roads in terms of what we want to get done and get it done. And I think that is an issue, in my view, although an awful lot has been done. But of course, the inflation that we spoke about earlier has driven road projects, excessively over budget and so on like that. Not because of any, it's just simply building materials post-COVID and the energy crisis coming out of Ukraine, which we stabilised. But if you want to, I mean, you take the Atlantic Technological University. I mean, that's over 175 million alone in 2023. Good capital projects happening there, as you know. Call 3 of the URDF, the Urban Regeneration Development Fund, 20 million across the northwest allocated there. And then you have the Ballydoreen Scramogue. That's a huge project. Significantly over budget before anyone starts roaring, or not roaring, but complaining about it. Yet everybody wants it. And we approved it, even though we know it's gone significantly over what was originally envisaged for that particular project. Westport to Turlock Road opened in June 2023. Ireland West Airport is designated as a strategic development zone. I mean, unlike, we went against all the economists 30 odd years ago more when Knock Airport was established. So there's always been efforts made to try and go against the grain in respect of investment in the regions. I'm committed to investment in the regions and to the cities and towns in the regions.
Taoiseach, this always happens. You list a few projects, and of course I don't dispute they're happening, but you ignore the overall abysmal picture. You ignore the facts. You don't deal with them. You don't come back to me and say, well, Deputy Harkin, actually, you're wrong about the completions in housing, or you're wrong about the fact that we don't spend a reasonable amount in the northern and western region. You are wrong about all of the facts that you put before me. You don't do any of that. You talk about a project here, a project there, and of course you're right, but that's the problem. The problem is the mindset that thinks if you can give a bit here and give a bit there, that is balanced regional development, and it's not. Just an example. A half hour ago, I spoke to Minister Ryan about the strategic rail review, and I was speaking to him about the Dublin-Sligo rail line, and he talked about the new projects. He mentioned balanced regional development twice, and he said projects in Cork, Galway, Waterford, Limerick, as well as Dublin. Now, that's the mindset I'm speaking about, and until that changes, Taoiseach, me or somebody else will be making this argument week after week, month after month in this House, and we will not be making progress.
But Deputy, I do think we need to engage on this too, because over 500,000 jobs have been created since this government took office.
Yeah.
No, just say, yeah, but 75% of those new jobs were created outside Dublin. The mantra for years was it was all Dublin-based IDA created jobs. That's not the case anymore. And the government has mandated the IDA to look to secure at least 50% of all new jobs outside of Dublin. And we have about 1,800 IDA client companies directly employing more than 300,000 people in Ireland for the second consecutive year. Now, over half of these are outside Dublin, demonstrating the scale of the contribution of FDI to Ireland. And the whole agenda and policy is to regionalise that FDI footprint across the country. More jobs in rural and regional Ireland in terms of IDA activity. And investment in the West and the border regions has been consistent over the last 5 years. And again, employment in Donegal, employment in Sligo, Mayo, Leitrim, Roscommon and Galway has increased by 18% between 2018 and 2023.
Figures don't lie.
The 3,000, no, they don't. 18% the jobs are up. If you look at the 3,000 beds that were provided by Minister Donnelly and the Health Department, they're regionally proofed. They're across the entire region. All our training for nurses, because of decisions I took as far back as 2003, are all regionalised.
Thank you,
We gave the Institutes of Technology the capacity to train nursing therapies are way back. And that's the way to do it, I think.
Thank you very much. That